Welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of FitFam. This is Hilary, Miss Olympia.
And this is Doug, the Formulator.
It's actually really cool to be with you guys tonight. We've been on the road a while, and it's good to be back. We are talking about, what should we do this podcast on, and we're talking about some of the things that, is natural to us and to a lot of people in our space, but maybe in the general public that they might not understand. And we thought of something hopefully really cool. So tonight's episode is about
optimal versus performance as far as nutrients go.
Yeah. So, what are optimal nutrients? What are performance nutrients? Is there a big deal, and why should you know about them? And it is a big deal, and it's important.
Well, and I think a lot of people know some basics, and I think a lot of people know about certain performance nutrients, but maybe not the whole plethora of them. So
right. The whole shebang.
Yep.
So let's dive into it and first talk about why this is important, and not just because some people know about them and not. I think that's really good, but I think that it's important to understand that when we're talking about nutrients, micronutrients mainly, about not carbs, proteins, and fats, but the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, those types of things, that there are very specific nutrients that the body needs for life. And if you don't have them, you don't have life. And if you're deficient in them, you have poor quality of life. And so they're critical. And then there are nutrients, and those are optimal nutrients, right, that you need to optimize the body and actually just to live, as I mentioned. And then there's performance nutrients that really help you when you're wanting to achieve the best muscle size, strength, agility, everything to do with just kind of performance in itself.
But you're not really speaking about just athletic performance, right?
We're talking about performance of the human body in any way. And so we call it athletic, but it doesn't mean you have to be a participating athlete per se, right? Mm-hmm. And so let's kind of break it down, because you have the optimal nutrients and then the performance, but there's a name that's given to performance nutrients out there, and it's called ergogenic. And we can break that down. Ergo, right?
You're going to have to start over.
Why?
Because there's a bug crawling on you.
I got rid of it. You have a problem with that? There's my little buddy. He likes a bicep. Bam.
Somebody watching this is not going to be able to get past the fact that a bug was crawling.
They can't get past my bicep?
You need to wipe it away.
Why was I supposed to do it? Eat it? Oh, we're going. We're still going. Let's go. You're wasting tape. Because you can't have my little bug friend. Sure. Okay, let's go.
We just came in from outside. There's no bugs all over. Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
You were talking about what ergogenic means.
Okay.
We're going. So you might as well get into it.
Okay.
You don't eat much.
Okay. Ergogenic.
Right. Ergo.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning.
Go ahead.
It means movement. So when you look it up, ergon, right? Movement. And so movement, ergogenics, biology, right? So movement of your biology, movement of the body. So anything that helps with the movement of the body, we call it performance enhancing nutrients, are ergogenic nutrients. And they're very specific. And we're going to get into those. But let's first talk about optimal nutrients, the things that you need that if you don't have them, you don't live. They're absolutely critical to health. And they're critical to reach optimal health.
Mm-hmm. So basically having your body in homeostasis, living at your best is what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So what nutrients are needed? Let's kind of the broad range.
Okay, right? So vitamins, minerals, enzymes.
Enzymes.
What else?
Probiotics. And then fatty acids.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So vitamins, minerals, enzymes, probiotics, fatty acids. Each of those have their own categories, right? Vitamins A, B, C, D for the vitamins, minerals, magnesium, calcium, and that probiotics, lactobacillus acidophilus bifidus, and then fatty acids, there's DHA, EPA. So each one of those have their own groupings, subcategories, really good point. And then, so those are the things that if you don't have them, you don't live.
Right.
And so they're very important And we can, talk about like the most important ones, and we do that. And really, we highly recommend you get blood work done or talk to a professional and find out exactly the nutrients you need, and be able to reach optimal health. And that's our favorite way, is to find out exactly your body, what it needs, what you're deficient in. But besides the optimal nutrients, then there's also optimal nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals and that are used up more when you are in a state of movement, right? Ergogenic. State of performance. You're trying to be able to take things to a higher level, or maybe you have a job that you're working.
So are we talking about mental performance as well, or are you talking mainly about body movement performance?
Yeah, so biology, basically mental also, right? Okay. And so a chess game could even have some factors with that. Right? Okay. And so absolutely anything to do with your biology that you're pushing it to ask it to perform above balance over just what's needed on a daily basis, your body uses up nutrients. So before we get into the ergogenic nutrients, the ones that we use for added performance, but they're not necessarily needed for life, right? Let's talk about some of the basic nutrients that are really critical when you are pushing your body to the limits. And again, we're not talking about a professional athlete necessarily, like in Hilary's case, a professional basketball player, football player. We're talking about anyone that you're wanting to perform at a higher level. You're wanting to, run and to do things and do your hobbies even at your very best. And so you want to look at that performance factor in life. And there are some nutrients that are really critical for that. And so let's go through a few of them right now. Vitamin D. Okay, yeah.
Vitamin D gets used up for brain function.
Brain function, for bone and brain function. I think that's really overlooked a lot, because we've understood with athletes many times that what actually starts to wane isn't so much their physical performance or body's ability to make ATP, right? Adenosine triphosphate. It's mental.
Yeah.
And vitamin D deficiency causes or allows the body to have mental stress. And a lot of times that's the difference maker with performance.
Okay, so if we're going to go with mental, then let's jump into fatty acids.
Oh, really good. Yep. So that's critical. I think that fatty acids is one of those factors that's more, I think we need to look at it as a brain food. It helps transport nutrients into the brain, but it's actually a food of the brain, meaning that the brain will utilize different fatty acids for cognitive function, for performance. And I think that we understand that at a high level now, because even the development of the brain is critical, that there are specific fatty acids that the mom needs for the baby in the first few years of development. If they're not there, you don't have that cognitive performance. And so let's say that we're good to go and we had our fatty acids when we're young, but as we get older, we don't take them in, and we're trying to perform at a high level, one that involves a lot of thinking, coordination, and we're deficient in them, then all of a sudden we're not having that performance that we could. Okay. And we get that a lot in sports where people are depleting their calories a bit. They're on a caloric deficit, right? And if the fatty acids aren't there, a lot of times we talk about carb depletion. I'm carb depleted and I'm losing, lock and keys in car, things like that, that athletes go through when they're maybe doing a deficit. But really many times it's because they've depleted their fat so much that they have a fatty acid deficiency. So that's a really good one too.
Okay. How about into minerals like magnesium?
Magnesium's a huge one, right? And I think that out of all of the minerals, magnesium is my favorite to talk about for performance, because it's critical for muscle strength. And it's critical, magnesium with calcium is critical for the muscle to actually contract. And so I think that the contraction of muscles, people get cramps a lot, things like that, performance-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I know when we're talking about, when we go into peak week, so, optimal health happens all throughout bulking season and competing season, but that last little bit of peak week, it's not super optimal health as far as longevity goes, because we couldn't maintain peak week, right? So during peak week, some of the things that I suffer with or deal with are like my teeth start to hurt, right? And we start having issues with calcium.
Absolutely. So when you're in a caloric deficit and you're really pushing the body fat, especially with women, because calcium and fatty acids, it's a 1-2 punch in how it works in the body. Fatty acid metabolism takes calcium. And so will happen. Hilary will start, her teeth start hurt, but we're talking, we give the right form of calcium in a matter
Instant.
of minutes, right? Bless you.
Yeah,
so,
within a matter of minutes, they start feeling better.
And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. In fact, like two things in my mind right now: the magnesium, calcium, and then about the peak week thing. But we'll finish on magnesium, calcium, and go into that to help people understand that athletes many times. Most athletes, 80, 90% of the time, they're living the ultimate lifestyle for optimal health, but then they actually push their bodies to a limit that they can't stay there. And so we'll go into more in detail on that. But back to the calcium magnesium thing, it goes so deep when it comes to performance and that crossover for just optimal health, because not only is it about having calcium and magnesium, and if you have a deficiency in those, it causes muscle cramps.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand, and hopefully this is an aha moment for a lot of people, is that you have two sets of blood vessels in the body, right? You have the blood going to the heart,
right?
Okay, and that's deficient in oxygen, it's coming back, and then you have blood going away from the heart, right? Your arteries, so your veins are going to the heart, arteries are going away from the heart. The veins don't have any muscle around them, they're just like little pipes. But the arteries going away from the heart, taking the blood and the oxygen to every organ tissue in the body, it has muscle around it. And that muscle will contract and it will actually allow the blood vessel to expand and contract as needed to take pressure off the heart. And if you're deficient in magnesium and calcium, that actually can make that constrict. So it makes the heart have to work harder, increasing blood pressure. So we have actually high blood pressure because of magnesium calcium deficiency, not just we think of cramps, so I have a cramp type thing.
Right.
So it's critical to understand that this is vital for the body, for health, for blood pressure, but especially with athletes, because when you're pushing the body, any of us, I would say athletes, like you kept correcting me earlier, right? It's not just athletes. Anytime we're doing an athletic event or movement or work, right, and we push it, if we don't have that magnesium calcium levels right, or if we're deficient in them, then if we get that cramp or the blood vessels aren't able to expand and contract, also we have high blood pressure, where I put the body under pressure, bad things can happen, right? And so let's go back to your peak week thing. I think it's important. I love when Hilary brought that up, because we started thinking about athletes, and in bodybuilding, right? We see it in real time, hourly, right? That last week. And then we also see that in a lot of sports, whether it be football, basketball, things like that. Everyone has a off season
or a building season, or a like a performance enhancing season, like where you're not in constant competition, you're trying to perfect your craft.
Absolutely. And so during that time, that's a really good time to have the optimal health, right? Like we want to kind of those of us non-professionals, we love that time frame, because if we do what Hilary does and other athletes, then we have optimal health. They're just eating clean, right? They're exercising,
it's all
trying
about
to build the muscle.
Yeah, it's all about supporting our bodies and the nutrients that we need for that craft. So we're really good about taking in all of our vitamins, minerals, and everything, but we're also really good about stretching and full range of movement, motion, and getting sleep, and all aspects of it, right?
Absolutely. And then in season, there's different times in season for different sports, but like with basketball players, right at the games themselves, or especially in the playoffs, you're back to back to back. Bodybuilding, obviously, that peak week, getting on stage, wrestling, that cutting weight that last few days, getting ready for it, boxers, things like that. Every sport, pretty much in the professional world, the actual sport itself and the day or two leading up to it isn't necessarily a time that they're anti-aging,
right? And also
they're building the immune system.
And also you can think about any sport and the stress that it puts on whatever body part or limb that is constantly moving. Like if you think about golf, or tennis, or any of those things, when you're in your off season, you're also really focusing on some specific rehabs and recovery. When you're constantly playing, and it doesn't mean that in season you're not also working on those things, but you're also working those muscles and joints heavily, because you're constantly competing.
Absolutely. And so I think that when we're talking now about moving into ergogenic nutrients, right? Movement enhancing, sport enhancing nutrients. We're talking about the nutrients to get you to that point, to that level. And these nutrients, a lot of them you should take all the time because we want to get our body to its peak performance ability, so that when you go through that, when you're on stage, that peak weekend bodybuilders, when you're competing at the highest level of basketball, whatever, or work, or whatever it might be that you're gearing up for that event type thing, that you have all the nutrients necessary so that you actually don't damage the body during that time. You might not be anti-aging during that time, but what we don't want is for you to damage the body, or if there's, that constant beating like football players, we want to limit, that damage so that we have the longevity there. So kind of want to set that stage for it, but let's go through ergogenic nutrients. And there's a little bit of controversy there. So why don't we start off with the non-controversy, right? The International Olympic Committee, that isn't necessarily.
Well, I still feel like creatine is sometimes something that people disagree about.
Absolutely, they do. But if you disagree about something like creatine, then you're an idiot, because basically it is. Because and the reason it comes back to the International Olympic Committee is, here's a group that really doesn't like talking about nutrients and that, very anti-drug, which is great, but they usually don't say much about nutrients. But they came out and said, look, here's some nutrients that even we say that if you take them, they're ergogenic, right? Yeah. And so that's when we talk about, when I say you're an idiot if you think creatine's not good for you, or, sport enhancing, it's just like you haven't read one of the 10,000 studies. So sorry, but that's just what it is.
So creatine is one of those non-controversial
The only controversy is that people think it's a steroid or something, right? They know it works, but sometimes it works so well to help build muscle performance that they're like, oh, that must be a steroid, but it's not. So let's talk about creatine. Creatine actually is like an amino acid, really, if you want to look at it, but it's found in foods, a lot of meats, and that it's just small amounts. And it actually gives the body the ability to make more energy, to make more ATP, okay? And so creatine, you take it in the body and it binds to a phosphate, creatine phosphate, and then the body looks for phosphates whenever energy is created, because you have ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So you have the adenosine and 3 phosphates, and the body will take it. It's like an explosion. It takes one of them, and that's energy, right? It gives you energy. So then it looks for another phosphate so it can do that explosion again, right? Those little engines. And creatine provides that. So creatine provides that energy. So your body can, when you're exercising, when you're performing at a high level, that your body has more ability to grab real quick phosphates to have more energy, more performance, so that then, you're in the gym, you're pushing harder, you're able to get more out of it. When you're actually performing, you can get more out of it because your body has more of those phosphates. So it's actually something just super healthy. And there are different forms of it.
And different forms are better than others.
Yeah. And so number one form, our son owns a company, Gains of Bulk, and they have instantized creatine monohydrate. And that's the most researched form of creatine.
The monohydrate is the most researched form.
So what creatine's bound to. And so they have the only instantized. In other words, it's the form of the most researched creatine in the world, the ability for it to basically absorb the best. So that's really great.
It's the most soluble.
Yep. And there's other forms of creatine that are great also. They bind them to actually the very next nutrient that the International Olympic Committee says is good. And
nitrates.
Nitrates.
Yeah.
So let's talk nitrates, because
let's talk nitrates.
Nitrates are something that you'll hear some people say, stay away from nitrates. They cause cancer. Like if you go and get meat, you don't want a meat that has added nitrates to it or nitrites, either one. So that's why when you go get your meat, then you should go to the butcher and get it, not, the bags that they're pre-made, because most of them have the added nitrates and nitrate. That's different. That's a chemical that actually can cause cancer and disease. The nitrates, we're talking about the nitrates in foods.
Aren't those listed as nitrites, though?
Both. No? They'll say nitrates and nitrates. Okay, so probably too much chemistry. A nitrite is, nitrate is 3 chemicals, NO3 and then NO2, right, is nitrate. So nitrites, NO3, NO2 is nitrate, and then nitric oxide is NO1. So it's just, but they're chemically made and they're bad for you, versus the ones that are found in food that convert.
Give me some foods.
Let's do it. What's the top?
Beets.
Beets. So beets is the most popular. Beets. And I'm telling you what, we planted some beets in our garden, Thank you, Cole. And we started getting them out. And, we take a lot of supplements with beet in it because we're a big fan of nitrates. But we're talking fresh beet, cut it up, and holy cow, man, Hillary's arms get all vascular and like crazy though, right before the workout.
Yeah,
and
no.
It
And
increases blood circulation.
Think about, so when I fasted the other day and I had broke my fast, one of the foods that I broke my fast with was sauerkraut, but it was also beets that I had. And immediately what happened?
Oh, just
my ears were just like,
yeah, you got
fire,
almost like a
blood was flowing.
Yeah, so really good. But nitrates are what's in beets. Also in arugula, actually, there's more nitrates in arugula. It's not as popular as spinach, things like that. And so nitrates are the nutrients that boost the body's nitric oxide circulation. And so because it increases circulation and energy, then that's why the ILC said, hey, this is really good for performance and it's really good for everything,
and it is.
Heart health, right? So creatine, nitrates.
So here's one that's surprising, right?
Yeah, really surprising.
Sodium bicarbonate.
And isn't that crazy? Out of the few nutrients that's listed, sodium bicarbonate. Now, what's that?
So weird to me.
So what is
baking soda?
Baking soda. Like what? Baking soda? What? It's high performance. It is, and here's why: is because it actually reduces the acid in the body, and that's one of the keys to performance and longevity. If you can reduce the acid buildup, and we know an athlete or you're working out or anyone just goes and works hard,
you're going to build up acid. Yeah.
And that acid depletes performance and it causes additional soreness, doesn't allow the muscle to recuperate immediately and then later on. And so the bicarbonate just helps to reduce the acid. So that's what they call it an ergogenic nutrient. Most ergogenic nutrients help like creatine to build energy in that. This one is an ergogenic nutrient, but from the backside, right? It comes in and it neutralizes acid. And super, in fact, we've added it into a lot of our formulas, right? Our chews, things like that, because it's so powerful and it makes such a huge, huge difference. So a secret, you want the cheap way, go buy just, Arm & Hammer baking soda and put a little teaspoon in your drinks.
There you go.
Bam, you got it. Okay.
Wow.
All right. What's another one?
Caffeine. And
yes.
This was pretty controversial.
Yeah, so this one I'll give is controversial, but the International Olympic Committee listed caffeine because caffeine provides energy. And it's like for performance, that's what they're talking about, right? The IOC isn't about health. They're talking about performance. Right. Now, it's not damaging necessarily unless you take too much, but caffeine is really critical. And the form is critical. So you can buy caffeine that is synthetically made, chemically made, and it's still made from coffee. So it drives me crazy. Rant? No rant?
Rant away.
A little rant.
Just go.
Here's the deal.
Have you had a bug crawling on you?
I know it. And it's around somewhere.
We're getting raw.
I didn't want to hear it. So the deal is that caffeine, if you look on a label, it says caffeine anhydrous. That is made from, we call it synthetically, but it's actually derived from coffee. And so a lot of people, I don't want to drink coffee. Well, then don't have caffeine because caffeine comes from coffee. So
you're telling me all caffeine comes from coffee?
If it says caffeine anhydrous, which is in 90, I'll be safe, 5%, I won't say 99% of all caffeines on the market, right? Anything that's in sodas and bars and anything else is caffeine anhydrous, right? So
at first here.
You're eating coffee. But anyways, so the thing is caffeine anhydrous because they did take it and they took all the other nutrients away, right? They took the rest of the coffee away, everything else. You just have that, then it's going to work no matter what. And there's nothing to buffer it. And so some people are fast caffeine metabolizers, others are slow. And now the caffeine is going to provide energy, but it also can provide so much energy, and because it's by itself, it doesn't have the phytonutrients around it. Like there's caffeine in green tea and yerba mate and coffee. And if you have the other nutrients around it and all those things, it buffers it. But if you have the straight caffeine, like in most products that are out there today in drinks, then its effects on the body are different based on your genetics. And so, if you went out and got ancestry DNA or things, one of the things they'll tell you is if you're a fast or slow caffeine metabolizer. Fast caffeine metabolizer. So you have to be careful.
I remember the days when we were trying to help people limit the amount of coffee that they drank because that was their main source of caffeine. Do you remember those days? It was a long, long time ago before energy drinks took off and became this craze. And now we're praying for people to go back to coffee, right?
I'd much rather have coffee or green tea or yerba mate,
but right,
or any of those things over the straight junk caffeines out there, because at least that's the phytonutrients in it, right? But if it's against your religious beliefs, whatever, it's the chemistry side of it, I'd much rather you have the phytonutrients.
Right.
And that's funny how it's kind of like switched, because the world's gone so chemical.
Yeah.
Right. So chemical, when before we're just like, hey, limit these foods that have all this caffeine in it. Now it's like, okay, have the foods that have caffeine in it. Quit taking the synthetic chemicals. Right. But as far as an ergogenic aid, it can be, but it needs to be taken, in controlled amounts. And anytime you're pushing over in the day of 400 to 500 milligrams, you're really pushing the limit.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, that's a ton. Man, honestly, they're putting 300 to 400 milligrams in a lot of these drinks now. In one drink.
Easy.
And so it's crazy.
Easy. And I do want to mention that there's other, detriments to coffee, as, the acid. So
acid
it's not just a caffeine issue with coffee. But anyways, okay.
Yeah.
So those are the main ones, right, with the IOC?
That's it.
There's some more, but
I think that's the main ones from the International Olympic Committee. Probably a little bit of beta alanine, and there's a few other little things they might mention, but those are the big, right? The big four.
So we want to go into go ahead.
Creatine, nitrate, sodium bicarbonate, and caffeine.
Okay.
But there are other nutrients that are ergogenic that the research is strong on, and this has kind of been our world for decades. So we've really researched deep about what is an ergogenic aid. What nutrients do I want to give people that are trying to hit the highest level of performance, right? First of all, to get the optimal nutrients, right? Do a questionnaire, do blood work, talk to a professional, find out what you need, get your basic optimal nutrients, increase some of them, okay, that you're going to need in performance matters. So you want to make sure you have enough, like we talked about, vitamin D, magnesium, calcium, fatty acids, okay? And then there are some other nutrients besides the ones we just talked about: creatine, nitrate, sodium bicarbonate, and caffeine. Let's talk about those.
So like glutamine?
Glutamine's my favorite.
I love glutamine.
Glutamine's probably my favorite nutrient that isn't hyped in the marketplace today. Glutamine is an amino acid, and its amino acid has extra nitrogen on that. And I know that might really mean anything to people, but carbohydrates and fats don't have nitrogen, right? There's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Only amino acids have nitrogen. And glutamine has this extra nitrogen. It's the most phenomenal amino acid for recovery, because it gives up this nitrogen and allows the body to recover and heal faster. So it's the number one healing nutrient. It's also
food for the gut.
Yeah. Made food for the gut. So it's like great for the gut, for the probiotics in your gut. And glutamine is just one of those nutrients. It also helps produce growth hormone in the body. So I'm a huge, huge fan of glutamine.
And then branched chains.
Branched chain amino acids, which are?
Isoleucine, leucine, and valine.
Oh, isoleucine, leucine, and valine. So these are just amino acids. Glutamine's amino acid, right? And so these three amino acids are the main amino acids the muscle takes into it when it's under pressure and it's starting to be fatigued, like with aerobic exercise mainly. And so taking those can help with endurance, help a lot. The main amino acid of the three is leucine. And so you'll see formulas, and they should be 2 to 1 to 1. In other words, 2 parts leucine, 1 part isoleucine, 1 part valine. So branched chain amino acids are great, especially during an endurance type workout. Those are awesome too.
Okay. Ribose?
Ribose, not heard of very much. No. And so if you ever go to a marathon, or especially an ultra marathon, you'll see posters everywhere, banners that say ribose. And why is that? And you don't see them at the track meet for like 100-yard dash. And it's because ribose is it's like a sugar, but it has an extra carbon factor with it that makes it so it doesn't raise blood sugar or anything like that. And it's energy for endurance. And so the endurance runners, if you are an endurance event, maybe even like you work solid for hours at a time without much of a break, ribose helps with endurance. It provides that extra energy without raising blood sugar. It provides that extra fuel for the body to use. And it's really a game changer for people for any type of endurance factor. So it's ergogenic for mainly endurance factors in the body.
Have any others come to mind? I know those were some of the ones that we jotted down before we came in. Have you thought of any other
I
even
thought of one
amino acids or anything?
Maybe they don't list it as a ergogenic because I think it's more of an optimal health. If you don't have this, you die. But probiotics, I think we've really come into light lately how important friendly bacteria probiotics are to performance, right? Because 2 factors. they produce serotonin and dopamine,
Right.
right? So,
Whoa, that's great. Yeah.
like with an athlete, I don't care what the athlete is, if they have good serotonin and dopamine, it's like in the gym. I know when Hilary's serotonin and dopamine are there because, she's in it to win it at a higher level. And things just, it's just presence. Your presence in there, more focused. And so with any sport, it's important. So since all of that's made, or 90% serotonin, 50% dopamine from the gut, then it's important that you have that friendly bacteria at a really strong level. And so we're talking to some researchers today that, we're isolating that, and that's really cool. We'll bring that up more later some other time.
Okay, so we also had discussed this. We've kind of hit everything that we wanted to touch on, but the number one optimal nutrient and performance nutrient, which is water.
I know, isn't that like mind blowing? We go through all these crazy nutrients, and you're like, the bottom line is what nutrient. I'm glad you said it that way, because really, what nutrient that if you didn't get enough of it would cause the biggest depletion in performance, and really is water. I mean, let's kind of go into that whole thing. That's why the condition of dehydration is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's experienced that. We've all experienced it.
Yeah, at some level or another.
Right.
Yeah.
That you're out of energy and everything. I mean, it's 117 today when we were driving in Arizona. And so at some point, though, you got hot and dehydrated. And what's the main thing you feel, right? Lack of energy.
Yeah.
Right? Mentally and physically. And the research is so strong on this that if you're dehydrated, you can lose up to 50% of your performance just from dehydration. And we're not talking dehydration at the level of out, I think, about not even really realizing you're dehydrated.
Just not hydrated properly.
That's a better way to put it. Absolutely. Yeah. So drink your water.
Drink your water. There's so much. This is one that so many people have so many different opinions. But so for the average Joe, that does work out, but not crazy intense, just the average human, how much water do they need?
So without getting into the actual calculation of it, right? I get hammered for being too in-depth on this. Let's just keep it simple. If you drank 3/4 of a gallon of water every day, no matter who you are, you're going to have a good chance of that's enough. Now, if you're a high-level athlete and you're sweating
so we're talking around 100 ounces.
100 ounces. And it's a simple number, right? Hit triple figures, 100 ounces. Then you're going to be able to say, okay, I'm pretty good shape there. Now, if you are sweating a lot and doing that, you need to do more. That's where we say a gallon, right? So most of the people we work with, we tell them a gallon a day because we're expecting them to do some sweating and doing some things through the day.
How would you know if you're drinking too much water? Like how would I know?
So it is possible to drink too much water, right? And you'll hear that from people. But the problem is 95% of the population don't drink too much water. You actually would feel extremely bloated all the time. You would know that. Like if you drink a whole bunch of water now, you get a little bloated, right? You'd feel that all the time. And very few people drink too much water.
When you are telling people you need 100 ounces of water, you mean water. You don't mean like they can count their coffee that's made with water in the amount of water they drink.
Yeah, soda, beer, all that.
We're not talking liquids. We're talking
straight water. Only count water.
Only count water.
And that'll help you too to make sure you hit your number. Because,
Right.
Obviously, I'm a big fan of watermelon. Like watermelon, there was a study out recently that ergogenic foods, that having watermelon, right, 4 ounces of watermelon before your workout, that improve the workout dramatically because of the citrulline in watermelon that makes nitric oxide, the nitrate.
I love it.
And the water in watermelon, right? So you can get water, and I highly recommend it from different fruits and that, but don't count it is the key. So actually, why don't we end with maybe some of the foods?
I was going to say that.
I like that
idea. So we've already talked about all of the micronutrients that are really important for not only an optimal life, healthy life, living in balance, but also a performance-driven life. What about those macronutrients? What are some high-performance macronutrients?
We talked about watermelon.
We talked about beets.
Okay, beets. So watermelon, beets, spinach and arugula. So beets, spinach, and arugula provide nitric oxide. So does watermelon. And nitric oxide is critical. Remember, that's the chemical in the body that helps the blood vessels expand, increases blood flow,
Just
it
helps
increases
with flow.
Energy.
Yeah.
Increases energy dramatically in the body.
Love
so
that.
those are great. So outside of the foods that are really great for performance by increasing blood flow and nitrates, there's a few others. So,
How about some blueberries?
blueberries is top level, especially for
And like cognitive function, right?
yeah, huge. Like
Yeah.
get this new study out. Like if you have, when you go to the store and you have that little buy that little square of blueberries, that little box with like about 4x4.
Yeah.
If you have that, if you just eat all those blueberries throughout the day, it improves your cognitive function almost 30%. That's crazy.
Wow.
Off of berries. And you talk about all these nootropics. Those are herbs and nutrients, and I'm huge on them, right? Different things to be able to boost brain focus and clarity. When if you just have, good, what's that? Probably 3 handfuls of blueberries a day, it improves it dramatically. And that's really where the performance comes in with the blueberries, because it's helping the mind, but then translates into actual movement, right? And your proprioception. So that's a really good one.
How about bananas?
Bananas, and mainly for the potassium, bananas and cantaloupe for potassium, which is critical. So
we didn't talk about electrolytes.
And so let's go there. So finish food, and we'll finish the electrolytes.
Okay. So do we want to keep going into the like fruits and vegetables, or do we want to expand out?
So I think we hit the importance of fruits and vegetables when we talked about the main ones, but there's some grains that are really great for performance. Oatmeal, quinoa, right? And why are those performance enhancing? And because there are complex carbs that the body will take and it'll break down. And it says this is going to be converted into energy, glucose, but it's not an immediate raise of blood sugar, and it stores them in the liver in the form of glycogen. And glycogen is just the word. When you combine a bunch of these energy molecules, glucose together, that's glycogen. And so it stores them, and it's like ready. It's your full fuel tank, and you need them. The body will pump them out into the bloodstream in the form of energy. And that's why these complex carbs are so critical for the body. And I'm a big fan of them, like the quinoa, steel cut, oatmeal, things like that. Okay, so those are the foods.
And then how about like salmon?
Ooh, salmon comes another one, because you get dual benefit from salmon. You get the benefit of the fatty acids for cognitive function, and you get that really good protein just for straight energy performance. Raw nuts, the same thing. They provide both, mainly the fatty acids, and there's some other benefits with raw nuts that are really coming out that's beneficial too. So that's a good one.
And then last, let's just kind of hit like the importance of protein when you're somebody that's trying to build muscle.
Okay. And, we went through that a little bit in the macronutrient talk, but I think that you're right. When we're talking about ergogenics, you can't overlook protein and the need of that in the body, because if you don't have enough protein, your body is going to, when it's worked at a high level, then it's going to look for protein, and you don't have it, it's going to go after its own muscle, and that's called catabolism. And where you're catabolic. So we need to make sure we have enough protein in the body. And I look at protein different than most people. I like to have enough carbohydrates in the body because they're protein sparing. In other words, you don't want your protein to be converted into fuel, to have to get broken down through something called gluconeogenesis. Basically, protein gets converted into glucose. You don't want that.
So when you're talking about protein sparing carbs, it just basically means that your carbs will be utilized for the energy so that your protein can be utilized for growth.
Just for growth. That's why when you don't need as much protein, if you're getting enough healthy carbs. If you're not getting enough healthy carbohydrates in your diet and the grains, you probably need more protein.
Because your protein is serving two purposes.
Boom. Yeah. Really good. Okay, so hope that helps.
Sweet.
We didn't hit on electrolytes. Let's hit it really quick. I think that's overlooked a lot.
Okay.
And electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, those are back to the minerals again that you need for life, but they're really critical for performance because they're used up. And it comes back a lot to two things. One is for the muscle contraction, but also for nutrients to get in and out of the cell. So how nutrients get in and out of the cells through an electrical communication and an impulse, and you need these electrolyte minerals to make that happen. If that doesn't happen, you don't have any interaction between the nutrients getting in and out of the cell, and obviously that's not good.
But you can go too crazy with the electrolytes, right?
You go too crazy about anything, but yeah, especially sodium and any of them you can go too crazy with, and it's just important to know that that there's a balance, and that's where with athletes it's so tough because I know that when we talk to most athletes, you tell them to do something one time, like take 1 milligram of this, you're going to take 10, all right? Take 10 grams, you're going to take 20. And you do have to be careful. And that's why we're a big fan of whole foods, because if I tell you to eat your potassium from bananas, You take too many bananas, you'll know it before something bad happens, right? But if you take too much potassium straight,
Right.
then that's how they kill people, right? If you're going to get lethal injection, it's potassium. So you want to make sure that you're balanced right. If you have too much, you die. You have too little, you die or have bad performance. You need just enough. That's why it's really important to have coaches. It's important to get with people to say, hey, how much do I need? And I think
that's pretty sports specific, depending on just how much you're sweating, just how much you're building, that kind of thing, correct?
Yeah, the type of muscle you're using. So we want to be able to leave you with some simple, tips. And today we talked about these crazy minerals and vitamins and probiotics and fatty acids and these creatines and nitrates and sodium bicarbonates. You're like a little bit like, well, okay, that's great, but what do I do? Like, how can I apply this information? Basically, what you want to do is you want to be able to make sure your baseline's covered with your optimal nutrients for life, right?
So first cover your optimal nutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, your enzymes, your probiotics, and your fatty acids.
And you do that by making sure that you take some supplementation of each of those. That's a good baseline. If you want to know how much, get your blood work, get a professional. You can go to nutrientsrx.com and do that, or some other great program. But then with ergogenic nutrients, I recommend that you get with someone that knows, based on what you just said, sport specific. You're someone that just works a lot, right? That you have a hard laborer. You're going to need different ergogenic nutrients versus someone that's a bodybuilder versus a wrestler versus, an athlete, pickleball player, whatever it might be. They're different. And if you're just someone that goes to the gym and wanting to build muscle and that sort of thing, then it's different for that too. You're going to focus more on the creatines and the nitrates type thing. And the best thing to do is to just get with someone that can help with that. A good trainer that knows their stuff can help with that. We talk about it a lot. And so you don't need all of those things, but I would say that of the ergogenic nutrients, to leave you with this, the two, I'd say the four that I would go with that everyone should take if you're all into performance. Everyone should take creatine, right?
Okay.
5 grams a day. Everybody on the planet.
Okay.
And a lot of that comes down to, we know of the benefits even with the mind.
Okay.
Right? So helps mentally, helps with memory. So creatine is a lot more than helping with muscle.
How much?
5 grams a day.
Okay.
Absolutely everyone.
Okay.
Everyone should take nitrates. And you can do it from food.
And it's great to get it from your food. Eat more arugula, more beets,
spinach,
your greens basically, but
and watermelon. Yep, you can do that. And if you take supplemental form, again, you can get those things in supplemental form, things that have beet in it, right?
Yes.
And or food nitrates. If it says food nitrates, then it's good. So creatine, nitrates, and how much? Honestly, if you have a couple servings a day of a food that has high nitrates, your beets, your watermelon, that you're covered, right? And then you can take some nitrate containing, a lot of supplements have them in them right before the workout because you want to get that vascularity and that blood flow. The third one that I'd recommend is the sodium bicarbonate if you're a person that knows you build up acid. So a teaspoon of baking soda a day, boom, you're there.
Cool.
And then the last one is the one that I think isn't talked about a lot that I mentioned, glutamine. I'm a huge fan of glutamine.
I'm a huge fan of glutamine.
And that comes back to 5 grams a day. Get a good fermented glutamine. Doesn't have much taste to it. Put it in your shake. And that's a game changer for being able to recover. So those are my 4.
That's perfect.
No matter what.
Love it.
Hopefully that helps.
Okay.
So remember, different types of nutrients, optimal health nutrients,
performance enhancing nutrients,
the ergogenics. Now you know the difference. Hopefully you know when to apply them based on what you're wanting to do, be able to create high performance in your life. Thanks for being with us, Miss Olympia, Hilary.
The formulator, Doug.
And our bug friend that's down here. All right. Keep chewing.